Welcome to our MaxProf client case study podcast interview. Today we'll be discussing a PAYE and Fringe benefit review that MaxProf successfully conducted. This engagement provided the organizational technical assurance, strengthened governance, and improved compliance across several complex benefit categories. With me is our PAYE specialist and MaxProf senior auditor, Bongani Makgoba, who led the assignment. Bongani, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me, Sanji.
Let us begin with you providing an overview of the challenges the organization felt or were facing upon engagement with MaxProf.
Okay, certainly. So this organization is a fairly large one, and they have decentralized cost centers. Over and above that, they have a rather large geographical footprint, nationally for sure. I think also our bordering countries as well. So in that regard, when it comes to matters such as payroll processing, it's very easy to get inconsistencies in processing the relevant information and data, as well as obviously having a decentralized cost center in terms of payroll can result in inconsistencies in payroll processing. Obviously, this will then affect the submissions thereof and also the valuation of the fringe benefits and whether this has been correctly declared over to the regulator, being SARS. So the challenge here was that the client actually wasn't necessarily too sure of whether they were meant to approach SARS and engage with SARS for a voluntary disclosure program, VDP, in order to correct what they feel like might have been a potential exposure in terms of PAYE.
Yeah, that uncertainty does bring about risk. So speaking of risks, what risks do organizations face when inconsistencies in PAYE and fringe benefit treatments are found?
Yeah, organizations face a number of risks actually. When looking at inconsistent processing of payroll, this can result in incorrect submissions of EMP 541s, EMP 201s actually, 541s as well. And these are likely to bring or raise rather audits from SARS. And should SARS find that your fringe benefits are undervalued, that can actually they can actually impose quite hefty penalties and interest onto the organization. Looking at it more on an internal basis, it reveals gaps, in things such as corporate governance, in internal control procedures, as well as raises sort of uncertainty from an employee's perspective, whereby the employee now no longer trusts the employer in terms of correctly processing payroll and correctly declaring the declaring the taxes over to SARS.
Yeah, definitely significant complexities across a broad spectrum. So, seeing as though there's a whole lot of areas that risks might arise, what was the scope of MaxProf's engagement?
So MaxProf was essentially engaged to complete a thorough assessment of PAYE compliance. And for this specific organization, this involved a review of a wide spread of fringe benefits. Just to name a few would be housing at below market value, free holiday accommodation, free game meets, bursaries, scholarships, transport for not only the employees but also the employees' dependents. That's just to name a few of the fringe benefits that the organizations was giving to the employees. So at this stage, essentially the organization was highly uncertain of the accuracy and the completeness of their fringe benefit recording and the valuation thereof and the declaration thereof over to SARS. So that's then they then reached out to MaxProf to help them rather get a hold of their situation in that regard.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We do know that with any tax authority, compliance is key.
Certainly.
So how did MaxProf approach this assignment, and what methodology was followed to ensure that we achieve that compliance for the organization?
Okay. Yeah, MaxProf, it was quite complex, a lot of back and forth here and there, but eventually got the work done. We essentially used a structured and consulting-led approach, which really comprised of about 4 phases. Just to go through these phases, number 1 was obviously the data integration and reconciliation. This is essentially the step whereby we are on site or we are communicating electronically with the client to obtain the necessary data set. This includes EMP 201s, EMP 501s, a sample of pay slips, fringe benefit schedules. This also includes the policies that come with these fringe benefits, obviously. And obviously this then allows us to have a complete data set to enable us to go through other computations. Thereafter, we have the fringe benefit assessment and actually the testing whether the client has correctly identified and valued these fringe benefits. So obviously this then involves recalculation, reevaluation of those fringe benefits, just to ensure that the client did correctly identify, calculate, and declare to SARS these fringe benefits. Moving on to the third stage, this would then be the risk identification and prioritization. And this is where we now pick up what the client hasn't done correctly, and obviously then poses quite a significant risk on their end in terms of compliance with SARS. And we then approach the client, or rather list the identified risks, and essentially take the client through a risk management process to ensure that in future, moving forward, this will obviously see the client being more compliant in terms of their fringe benefits and overall in terms of their payroll accuracy. Last but not least, we have the governance and sustainability recommendations. This is where we now write out a closeout report to the client, just identifying what the scope of work was, the engagement between MaxProf and the client, and essentially giving the client the necessary methodologies moving forward, essentially, to enable them to correctly identify such fringe benefits, calculate them, and declare them correctly according to the 7th schedule of the Income Tax Act.
100%, and it's a very thorough and in-depth approach.
Certainly.
You mentioned the closeout report that was then presented to the client. Could you perhaps highlight some of the key findings that may have been included in this closeout report?
Okay, certainly. Like I said initially, earlier on, there was a lot of back and forth with the client. As much as we did get it right, fortunately we did get it right. And the findings produced that, in actual fact, regarding the fringe benefits, they were found to be correctly treated. What brought about the back and forth rather was, I don't know if you call it internal affairs with the organization, but on our side, the challenge was obtaining the necessary data. If not data, you find that it's perhaps coming late, or it's a he should, she should do this, and that really kind of brought difficulties in completing this assessment. But like I said, eventually we did come right with all the information we needed, and after having done our calculations, we were able to identify that in terms of how they identified and treated the fringe benefits was actually correct. However, and this is quite a big however, we found quite significant gaps in terms of internal control procedures, as well as it brought rise to governance issues within the organization that we were able to sort of identify through our communication with the client. And this obviously then tends to affect things such as policies. It affects things such as record keeping for these fringe benefits. So as much as it was identified that it is according to SARS guidelines, what brings about the completion of the declaration, we found a lot of gaps in that regard, a lot of internal control issues probably being the biggest I'm finding there.
Yeah, I think that's something that auditors in general would face. I mean, we go into the day-to-day runnings of a company or of an entity, and it may not always be as simple as a calculation that we need to double check. Internal controls and processes are extremely important when it comes to these types of engagements, and finding those gaps are often what will assist in ensuring compliance
and bring the biggest value to the client, certainly. And I feel like that's where we bring a lot of value in terms of our service offering, because we not only look at the arithmetics or the quantitative side of things, also look at the qualitative side of things, which include things such as, your internal control procedures, and just ensuring that there isn't necessarily a gap in that regard, because that particular gap can bring rise to a number of other compliance issues. And when the tax man comes knocking, you can't say, no, sorry, we didn't follow internal controls. The question then becomes, why did you not follow those internal controls, or why are they not even in place to begin with? So yeah, internal control, quite a big talking point.
Yeah. In saying that, maybe enlighten us on the overall conclusion of the audit and on the PAYE exposures that may have been identified, whether it be on controls or calculations.
After having completed meticulous reconciliations and calculations of what the fringe benefit valuation should have been according to the SARS guideline, compared to what the organization did submit in terms of the 501s over to SARS, we found that whatever exposure that might have existed at that point in time was not significant enough. So again, despite the back and forth, despite the internal politics, they were able to essentially get it right. And this then resulted in our final conclusion, in us rather recommending them to not go for the VDP, because like we were saying, arithmetically, things were pretty much in a line with or according to SARS guidelines.
And I'm sure that brings about a whole lot of comfort for the taxpayer as well.
Certainly.
Knowing that an independent, highly skilled team of auditors have been through your processes, found the gaps, brought them to your attention, and sort of then given you a green light to say, you're good to go and you shouldn't be facing much issues. That level of comfort is very also rewarding for us to see.
Certainly.
Yeah. So how did this, I think the question might be partially answered, but how did this review benefit the organization operationally, maybe post our engagement?
I think post our engagement, I think the starting point is to say that, like you just mentioned, the organization gains independent assurance over their tax matters and their tax affairs regarding pay as you earn. Obviously, having this independent assurance, like you said, brings rather a huge comfort to say that, okay, we've been doing things correctly. However, the auditors or the consultants did identify key issues that we need to look at. But I think the first and most important part is to say that it brings a great sense of relief in terms of independent assurance, to say that it's an objective opinion that gives your work clarity and a sense of correctness, if I may put it that way. And obviously that has a domino effect in terms of how then the organization may benefit operationally. Operationally, you now know that those that you've placed to complete the task of ensuring the correct processing of payroll, the correct declaration over to SARS, are in fact doing their work correctly and diligently. So, and it also then gives the employee sort of that confidence, to say that, okay, the organization has taken responsibility and has taken initiative to go out there essentially and look for independent assurance over their processes and procedures. And the employees also will find comfort to say that, okay, no, my tax matters are being handled with care.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily have to be overly concerned when approaching the taxman independently as an individual when I'm filing my yearly tax returns. So operationally, I feel like it has quite significant benefits, in the sense that those benefits not only are felt immediately, but it's something that really tends to trickle down through the organizational structure, whereby it brings a sense of relief, a sense of confidence, and a sense of motivation, if I may put it that way, to get things right. Especially after having identified that there are gaps that were identified by the consultant. I feel like it brings a sense of motivation to say that, okay, from this closeout report, what can we, or what are we meant to be extracting from this, and ensuring that we implement timelessly to ensure that moving forward we see sustainable compliance, really, because we don't want to often encounter issues internally or externally with SARS. So I think those are the operational benefits that such an exercise can bring an organization.
Yeah, I think it's one of the key points that auditors are not always there to find faults and to highlight them. It's if the organization looks at it as in a positive light and say, okay, these are the gaps and we need to cover them up to ensure we improve. I think three things really stick out for me from this whole engagement, and that is assurance, improved audit readiness, and reduced risk.
Certainly.
And that's exactly why these reviews are so important and valuable. Another question would be, maybe what lessons can other organizations learn from this particular case?
I think first and foremost, the type of organization and sort of the magnitude of the organization really matters. Given this certain client, like I said, they were decentralized and had a wide, or rather a large national geographic footprint. So that can bring or really hinder seamless processing of matters or cost centers such as payroll. Therefore, I'd really recommend that should your organization have a decentralized cost center, payroll cost center rather, it's highly recommended for it to be centralized. And what that benefits obviously is things such as the steps outlined in processing payroll. We are now following the same steps to process the payroll. There won't be one organization implementing their assumption or their thought on let's say a clause in the act, or interpreting it in one way, whereas another organization elsewhere is interpreting it another way. So I feel like centralized reporting is perhaps the best and seamless way to go ahead with processing payroll. With having said that, I think as well as having regular reviews, let's not wait for the risk to get to the stage whereby you are so uncertain you feel like you may need a VDP. I think organizations should really get into the habit of conducting regular reviews of not only payroll taxes but all taxes that they're exposed to, because it really goes hand in hand. Don't make the mistake of thinking SARS is only picking on a single tax type. They're looking at this simultaneously, and obviously you need to ensure that your organization as a whole is compliant. Looking at other matters, I feel like what is of importance as well is ensuring that your policies, and more especially those policies found within your fringe benefits, are in line with legislative changes, because should those change and you not pick up that particular change, you're immediately sitting with an exposure.
That's another reason why the previous point regarding regular reviews is important, because experts in the field are constantly up to date.
Yes.
Organizations, the internal payroll or HR representatives might have so many things on their table.
Exactly.
That these things often slip by.
Yeah.
And having that expert every now and then to be in there to update you on these any changes to regulations is extremely important.
Very important, because now you are not only up to speed with the changes in regulations, but you're also sustaining your compliance, So again, I think another important factor becomes regular training, not only for the staff processing the payroll, but involving employees as well. Because I feel like the more they understand the procedures, the more they understand the tax laws, the more they are able to go through a practical experience of what makes up the tax deduction, the more comfort it brings them, And I think that's where now regular training can also be of value to the clients, because having that confidence, having that ease in which procedures are taking place, I think really just makes things a whole lot easier.
Which is something that MaxProf also delivers,
certainly.
Training to organizations on all tax types. So yeah, that's a very good point that you made. Upskilling your staff and upskilling your employees, your finance departments is never a bad thing.
Yeah, it goes a long way. Certainly, it goes a very long way.
Thanks, Bongani. I think I got one last question, and it would be something again that we probably touched on as we've been discussing this engagement. But what long-term value did this project create for this organization?
Long-term, I'm instantly thinking corporate governance. I'm instantly thinking internal controls. Our closeout report included quite detailed recommendations regarding how they should go about processing the fringe benefits, record keeping as well. That's also quite important, because should you not have the necessary supporting documentation, again, SARS can come and say, how are you identifying or determining this? However, you don't have the necessary supporting documentation. So I feel like long-term and sustainable compliance is given through such detailed closeout reports, whereby we are detailing and giving, let me call it, templates as to how we best advise for organizations to sort of go through recording such benefits and ensuring that these benefits go through all the way to the system. And another thing is the timeliness of recording this. One issue we faced actually was that some of the benefits were being recorded post year end. So now this can obviously cause a cutoff audit issue, which can result in a substantive or rather substantial penalty or fine, or exposure rather, because you think a calendar year equates to a tax year, for example.
Easily avoidable scenario.
Very easily, should you have the necessary internal controls in place.
Exactly.
Even upgrading systems, for example, instead of having things done on paper, and this is where I come back to my point of having decentralized systems. You find that some areas or some cost centers are conducting everything on paper.
Yeah.
And they may not have the necessary backup should natural disaster occur. Should mistakes happen, should the files get lost, it's a problem. So things such as, even as simple as costly as it might be, but quite beneficial, is an area of perhaps upgrading your systems to ensure that all data is captured on time, is complete, is accurate, and is ready for the payroll guys to assess.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, data integrity and document storage is extremely important.
Very.
Compliance makes any potential audit that much easier, and makes the whole process much more smoother.
Certainly.
I think I want to thank you once again for your insights. And this case study, I think, for me, demonstrates how a structured PAYE and fringe benefit review can help organizations strengthen their governance, reduce tax risks, and improve overall payroll accuracy. So, for organizations facing payroll complexities, fringe benefit uncertainties, MaxProf is ready to assist.